Bueno, muy buenos días a todas las personas que empiezan a unirse a esta sesión informativa del día de hoy, 24 de enero. Mucho gusto para todos. Mi nombre es Karen Martínez, hago parte del equipo de Consejería Académica y Relaciones Internacionales aquí en Colfuturo y el día de hoy estamos con London School of Economics, LSE, y bueno, quiero empezar explicándoles un poquito el formato del presente webinar, de la presente sesión informativa. Entonces, en la primera parte tenemos a Nathan Brennan, él es el representante de esta institución y nos va a hablar sobre una gran variedad de temas que sé que les van a ser de muchísima utilidad a todos los interesados. Entonces tendremos cosas relacionadas a financiación, hospedaje, a becas, ayudas, oferta académica y todas las recomendaciones que Nathan desde su experticia pueda brindarles a todos. Adicionalmente, Nathan también nos va a hacer un especial énfasis en el convenio que se tiene con Colfuturo, que para quienes de pronto no lo tienen presente, consta de ofrecer una beca del 100% para un integrante o una integrante del programa Semillero de Talentos de Colfuturo y adicionalmente una beca del 20% para todo el resto de los beneficiarios de Colfuturo que sean seleccionados por el programa Crédito Beca y admitidos en cualquier programa de maestría de London School of Economics. Adicionalmente, y ya contando con la gran compañía de Nathan, tenemos aquí a Natalia Bernal, a Juan David Blanco, a Federico Álvarez. Ellos son beneficiarios y estudiantes de LSI actualmente y es muy valiosa su participación en este webinar porque nos van a compartir toda su experiencia, nos van a compartir todos sus tips, sus consejos, qué hacer, qué no hacer. Entonces, realmente la invitación en este punto es aprovechen al máximo el espacio, hagan todas las preguntas que consideren necesarias, no se queden con nada y bueno, vamos a estarla resolviendo a lo largo de la sesión. Así que, Nathan, thank you so much for being here today. We are so happy to have you here with us. Natalia, Juan David, Federico, mil gracias a ustedes también. Estamos muy ansiosos por escucharlos. Pueden iniciar con su presentación.
Thank you so much. Bienvenido. Muchas gracias por venir. Primero, lo siento, hablo solo un poco de español. Estoy aprendiendo, así que hablaré inglés. Espero que esté bien. Okay, so I'm going to speak. Sorry for my bad Spanish already, but I'm going to speak to start with a little bit in English. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. We are really grateful that you have taken the time out to come and listen to me this morning. I can't think of anything worse than listening to me speak on a Friday morning. So thank you so much for coming along and choosing to be here. So by means of a quick introduction, so as Karen delightfully said, my name is Nathan and I'm based here at the London School of Economics. And I have particular responsibility for working with students and partner universities, partner schools in South America. And so we're here today to really speak to you, the very best students, professionals in Colombia, to talk a little bit about what we might be able to offer to you. One of the amazing opportunities available to Colombian students, of course, is the amount of scholarship and funding and educational credit that you can receive from institutions like COLFUTURO to study abroad. And let me say, so when I travel, I'm very lucky and I get to visit lots of different countries in South America, in Africa, in the Middle East. Everyone is so jealous, right, that you have this opportunity, because this is honestly one of the best scholarships, credit programs anywhere in the world. And of course, young Colombians. So we're going to talk a little bit today about our relationship with COLFUTURO, what LSE might offer you as a master's or PhD student. But what was really important to us is we didn't want just for you to hear from me, right? So as was mentioned, I'm so pleased to say that I'm joined by three real life, actual living, breathing LSE students who've all joined us from Colombia and are part of the LSE students. So once I've done a bit of an introduction, I'm going to hand over to them and they are going to talk in much better Spanish than I can about their experience and any advice they might have. But where I wanted to start with is here. So obviously, the clue is in the name. We are the London School of Economics, and it will come as no surprise that we are based in London. And I wanted to start here because, of course, when you're thinking about where you might like to study for a master's degree or for a PhD, obviously keep in mind that you are going to be traveling to a new city, a new culture, a new way of life. And I think that for some of you, you might have visited London before, right? Maybe you've been on vacation and you've done the very touristy things, right? So you've gone to see the Houses of Parliament, you've gone to look at stolen art in the British Museum, and those kind of tourist type things, right? London is a huge, amazing city full of all these attractions and culture and different people. But the point I wanted to make is, of course, that London is not only a great city to live in and visit and full of culture and things to do, but people also don't realize that it really is a city built for us in total over 600,000 students, right, in the city. And it's actually been ranked now for almost 10 years in a row as the best city in the world to be a student in. And that's because there are so many students, there are so many universities, so many research opportunities, part-time jobs, discounts, and everything, right? So again, you are sort of coming to this amazing city and the culture and the history, but it's also very much a student city. But one of the problems you have is, and it's, it's a good problem to have, is how much choice there is. So of course, if you're thinking about studying abroad, you could go to the UK, you could go to the USA, you could go to Germany, to France, to Saudi Arabia, wherever, right? You have a lot of choice. And just to show you how much choice you have, I always like to share a little map. Now, let me tell you, if you come to London, you are going to learn this. This is the tube map. And this will just show you, right, kind of where LSE is based. So LSE is right in the middle of the city. But like I say, the reason I want to show you this is not so you can start learning the tube, but it's just to show you the problem, which is if you look at where LSE is based, within 1 mile of LSE, there are almost 20 other universities. If you look at London as a whole, there are 40 different universities. And now your COLFUTURO funding that you might apply for, you could pretty much apply to all of these universities, right? And COLFUTURO might give you funding to go and study at UCL or University of Law or Queen Mary's, right? So there's so much choice. So what I want to do is rather than speak too much about, LSE's history or, those kind of things, is just spend a few minutes explaining what makes LSE unique. Okay, because again, it's a really big decision to figure out where is going to be the right university for you and the right course. So let's spend a minute just talking about how LSE is unique. And now I am self-aware enough to know that every single university in the world will tell you how special they are, how unique they are, right? How important and celebrated and whatever they are. But LSE actually is. And the reason LSE is so special and so unique is because we are the only university in the UK and one of very few universities in the world that is purely dedicated to the social sciences. Now, the way I like to think about this, of course, is that there are a million universities you could go to study politics, right? Or to study economics, or to study social sciences, or to study sociology, or whatever it is, right? But there is only one university, certainly in the UK, where everyone is interested in the same things as you, which is, when you walk around our campus, you will hear the most amazing conversations about politics, about international relations, about economic development. And that's because everyone at LSE is interested in how our world works, right? Whether that's from an economic perspective or a policy perspective or a sociological perspective, whatever it is, but everyone at LSE is united by the fact they are interested in how. And one of the things to say is that, yes, economics is in our name, but that is not the only thing we do at LSE. Right? There is a lot of range. So just to give you an insight into the kind of things you might come to LSE and study, I always like to share some examples on screen of recent research from our academics, right? So the people who would be teaching you. So just to pick a few examples, if you look at the bottom right of your screen, you might be able to see someone called Nicholas Stern. Some of you might have heard of Nicholas Stern before. If not, don't worry, because I guarantee, here's my bet, in 100 years' time, everyone will know who Nicholas Stern is. Right? In 100 years' time, everyone will know who he is. And the reason everyone will know who he is because he was the first person in history, anywhere in the world, in any country, to write a report, and this was about 20 years ago now, um, into how climate change was going to completely remake the world economy and what it was going to do for people's jobs and people's consumption habits and their trade and the industries they worked in, right? So you can come to LSE and study climate change from a social science perspective. But then you also have someone like Paul Dolan, who you can see in the middle of your screen, who's head of our psychology department. And he's an expert on happiness, but particularly how we build societies where people feel they are valued and feel they have purpose and meaning. So this is just to say, yes, you can come to LSE to study economics, but the social sciences touches so many different areas of our lives. And so there is so much more to kind of what's available to you than just kind of economics. So just to put on screen really quickly, there are around about 25, 26 different teaching departments at LSE, so different subjects that you can study at the university. And what you'll notice is that there will be some subjects there that you are already familiar with, economics, finance, law, but because we're a specialised university, we also have some quite specialised areas of study. So things like economic history, things like health policy, things like methodology that you might not find at other universities because they are very, very specialised areas. And the great thing about all of this is that you can use COLFUTURO funding to essentially study anything at LSE. So there is almost no subjects that are on economics. You're good. If you're sat there and you're interested in law, you're good. If you're interested in gender, you're good, right? Every single kind of subject is eligible. A couple of points additionally, really quickly. Another thing that makes LSE very unique is that we are a very small university. So it's not just that we're specialised, it's that we're much smaller than most other universities. So for example, we have about 12,000 students at LSE, but when you compare us to our neighbour, which is UCL, okay, they have 55,000 students. So we are much, much smaller. We are just in one location. So we are kind of like a little in the middle of London. And what's also really interesting for this event today is at LSE, we actually have more postgraduate students than we have undergraduate students, meaning, of course, there are more masters and PhD students at LSE than there are bachelor's students. So if you're thinking about, where you might like to do a master's or a PhD, actually LSE has more of you and we're a slightly older community. Really quickly as well, I think it's important to say where our students come from. So at LSE, if you take our masters and our PhD students together, over 80%, 80%, come from outside of the UK. That means there are more students like you at LSE, i.e. who didn't grow up in the UK, than there are like me being from Manchester, right? Which is pretty amazing in terms of the people you meet and the languages and the different points of view and all of those kind of things. And what's really interesting is that although LSE is small, we really punch above our weight in terms of producing world leaders, right? Because people really do come from all around the world to LSE to study, how our world works, and quite often take that knowledge back to their home countries and become leaders, particularly in the field of politics and government. So no introduction necessary for Juan Manuel Santos, Ursula von der Leyen, that's the president of Taiwan, president of Barbados, the prime minister of Finland, even JFK was an LSE student, right? So the point I'm trying to make is people really do come, like you, from places all around the world to LSE, study how it works, and quite often do some really impressive things, after they've left us, not just in their own lives, but in the lives of the people around. And in particular, I'm not going to say too much on this because I'm going to leave it to the experts, but LSE has a really large Colombian student population. In fact, we have the most Colombian students at LSE of any UK university. So if you were leaving Colombia because you never wanted to see Colombian people again, I'm so sorry, you will at LSE. Okay, so we have over 70 Colombian students right now today. We have a students' union society, which I'm not going to talk too much about because they will in a second, but like, you know, to bring students together. So yes, you are going to a new country. There'll be lots of different people you've never met before from all around the world, but there will also be people from similar backgrounds to you. Finally, of course, when you finish your degree, if you go back to Colombia, we also have our alumni network there as well. So you can meet with other people who've studied at LSE. Many of them are very successful in business, in law, in politics, in higher education. So it's a really good network. And the final thing I just wanted to touch on, of course, before we hand over to our Students' Union, is, of course, is the opportunity available to you with COLFUTURO. Now, the reason there are so many Colombian students at LSE is because of COLFUTURO, because this is such an amazing opportunity. So you probably already know this, but if not, really quickly, COLFUTURO will give you up to 50,000 US dollars to fund a degree at LSE, either a one-year master's program or a 3-year PhD. And while that's initially a loan, of course, that can be converted into a scholarship depending on certain criteria, being situation. The other thing we also offer at LSE is we will provide a contribution, so like a discount on your fees if you have LSE funding. So you will get 20% off your fees in addition to the funding from COLFUTURO. And on top of that, we also have 2 full scholarships for our Semilleros students to come to LSE for a full. LSE is actually COLFUTURO's oldest partner. We were one of the very first universities in the world to sign an agreement with COLFUTURO. So we're one of the oldest partners. And what I would say is it's a really nice idea to have a look on the COLFUTURO website and have a look at all of the students who've come to LSE with COLFUTURO. I think, as I said in my video, it's like 800 students in the last 30 years have come to LSE. So if you need some inspiration of, you know, oh my God, maybe I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I've got the skills. I don't know if I've got the background. Look how many others have done it. And also have a look at the range of things they've studied. This is such an amazing opportunity. And we really would encourage you, right, to aim high, aim for universities like LSE, and you will be joining a growing club of Colombian students who've done that. I've already spoken a little bit longer than I promised, so I'm going to skip past a few bits that I might come back to later. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to the experts, Natalia, Juan David, and Federico, to talk a little bit about their experience. So, guys, thank you so much for being here. I will hand over to you.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for this space. I'm Karen too. I'm going to switch to English. And Fede, ¿puedes compartir el slide? Si quieres poner una presentación. Gracias. Primero, qué alegría poder ver tanta gente conectada. Me llena demasiado. Mi nombre es Natalia Bernal. Yo soy vicepresidenta de la Colombian Society, que nos pueden seguir en escaneando el código que está en pantalla. La realidad es que la sociedad tiene más de 25 años y como lo decía Netan hace un rato, es increíble la cantidad de colombianos que estamos en el ESI. Creo que si a mí me hubiesen preguntado hace un año exactamente si imaginaba conocerme tantos colombianos, no lo imaginaba, tampoco me imaginaba conocer tantas personas del mundo, de otros países, pero definitivamente no lo esperaba. Yo estoy estudiando aquí una maestría en Local Economic Development, que ahorita un poquito nos vamos a introducir mejor Juanda y Fede, pero digamos que en términos generales de la sociedad participan activamente 40 estudiantes. Nuestro rol principal aquí en el ESI es hacer de esta comunidad de colombianos una comunidad que esté más cercana, tratar de conectar las personas de 2 formas. Una es a través de eventos, como lo ven ahí, y otra es definitivamente creando esas relaciones. Y este segundo punto es bien importante porque acá en este grupo, en este momento estamos conectadas 120 personas. Muchos de ustedes no se conocen entre ustedes, Entonces, cuando vayan a venir o cuando estén pensando en venir a Londres, lo que va a pasar es que van a encontrarse con una cantidad de colombianos, pero que jamás han visto antes. Y ese potencial de conectar entre ustedes, y se van a dar cuenta si están en esta llamada y se aplican el y es que todos tienen unos perfiles increíbles y absurdos que de verdad valen la pena. Es por un lado conectar personas, y la foto de arriba que pueden ver en la parte superior es relacionada con los eventos. Este fue nuestra celebración de velitas del año pasado, hace un mes y medio larguito. Eh, es muy importante que a pesar de que estemos acá, logremos conectar como con esos eventos que para nosotros son tan claves. Uno de esos ellos. Y en la segunda foto, es el año pasado también, a final del año, hosteamos un evento con la embajada aquí en Londres, relacionado con el lanzamiento de una de las últimas versiones de La Vorágine, uno de los libros más importantes para el país. Y digamos que eso es lo que hacemos acá, tratar de reunir todo este potencial. Em, Como lo decía Nathan, es muy importante, acá hay una variedad de maestrías increíbles, entonces se dar cuenta que hay colombianos estudiando desigualdad, otros colombianos estudiando local economic development como yo, otros como Juan, un poco más enfocados en los asuntos políticos, entre otros. Entonces creo que es clave, y es muy importante que entiendan que ustedes están aplicando algo que ustedes tal vez dicen, yo no sé si esto lo ha hecho alguien antes. Hombre, seguro que sí. Y si se meten a la página de COLFUTURO y logran buscar por ahí quién podría ser, seguro van a encontrar a alguien de Colombia. Yo creo que mínimo un colombiano está en cada maestría, o al menos de las que están aquí en el ESI. Ahora, creo que esto por el lado de la sociedad, si algo ahorita Juanda y Fede me complementan, si me falta decir algo de la sociedad, y les voy a contar un poco de mí. Como ya les conté, estoy en el Local Economic Development, mi maestría pertenece al departamento de Geography and Environment, y yo la elegí principalmente porque yo llevaba 4 años trabajando en finanzas. Si alguno por aquí lo ha visto, pero llevaba 4 años trabajando en finanzas, y al final lo que pensé es, bueno, como que sería bien interesante hacer como o darle un enfoque diferente a mi carrera, y pensé que bueno sería hacerlo eso viniendo a un lugar donde pueda aprender todo eso. Aprendiendo el desarrollo, cómo no hacer como de las finanzas algo más chévere para los sectores privados, sino para el país, para Colombia y pues para los países en general en desarrollo. Por eso vine, y creo que fue la mejor decisión que tomé hace un año. Creo que como ustedes, yo me conectaba a estas reuniones y tenía muchísimas dudas de si esto era, si esto no era. Y no sé si ustedes ya revisaron la lista de maestrías, pero hay demasiadas, todas muy parecidas. Y decía, pero no sé si puede ser esta, puede ser la otra, puede ser la tercera. Y al final les digo, creo que revísenlas muy bien, en detalle, y que igual se cruzarán, podrán ver materias de algunas, de otras y demás. Pero definitivamente tomen la iniciativa de hacerla, de poder tener así, que si tienen algo en mente, si esto podría funcionar o no con mi carrera, a lo mejor sí, seguramente sí. Y otra cosa que creo que es muy importante, y creo que es en la que están atravesando todos, es en el proceso de aplicación. Cuando yo creo que esa parte no la había escuchado, la que me mostró Netan, de no había analizado qué tan fácil no era pasar. Yo sencillamente en su momento dije, esto es muy difícil, o sea, pasar a London School of Economics debe ser imposible. Y yo me acuerdo que hablaba con mis amigos y les decía, pero si hay un porcentaje tan bajo de probabilidad, ¿yo por qué me voy a esforzar tanto en un ensayo? O sea, debe ser muy extremo, ¿no? De verdad, para mí era como sencillamente muy difícil pensar en que todo el mundo, o sea, que la tasa de éxito, o que mi tasa de éxito en general fuera a ser alta. Y al final creo que vale la pena, le metí mucho la ficha al ensayo, y creo que ese es mi mejor consejo que les puedo dar en este momento. Si no tienen ofertas todavía, si están aplicando y están en el proceso, métanle mucho la ficha al ensayo. Al final, y yo lo que me he dado cuenta es que aquí estamos personas con diferentes perfiles. Entonces, si su perfil no está directamente relacionado con la maestría, no importa. Lo más importante es cuál es como tu huella personal que hace que tú quieras estar en ese programa y qué tanto le vas a aportar a ese programa. Y eso es lo que yo he visto acá. De verdad que uno ve una diversidad de personas en términos de culturas, una cantidad de gente de todos los países, pero también todos con unos backgrounds supremamente diferentes. En mi maestría estoy yo con personas con perfiles financieros, otras personas con perfiles más políticos, de ciencias políticas, etcétera, personas con perfiles de comunicaciones, entre otros. Entonces, definitivamente ese background es definitivamente lo que los va a hacer entrar o no, y todo lo que ustedes pueden aportar de diferente. Y mi tercer punto de lo que ha pasado y de mi experiencia aquí en Londres es desen la oportunidad de venir y conocer gente tan crack que creo que en su vida habían pensado que iban a conocer. Eh, yo creo que si alguien me hubiese dicho que iba a estar sentada enfrente con el creador de LinkedIn, jamás lo hubiese pensado. Uno de los candidatos presidenciales de Chile, casi mejor amigo de Juan David, tampoco. Eh, entonces creo que desen la oportunidad de venir y de conocer todas esas personas que de alguna forma no los van a conocer en otro lado, sino es estando aquí. Eh, y creo que eso es, ya le voy a dar la palabra a Juanda, seguramente para que le siga complementando, pero qué bueno y si está en el proceso de aplicación, no duden, si se puede, por más de que se vea difícil y lejos, si se logra. Somos muchos colombianos acá y en verdad no duden en conectar con cada uno de nosotros por LinkedIn o por las redes o por donde sea, porque pues también podemos ayudar.
Gracias, Nati. Y gracias a Nathan también ahorita en la introducción. Yo quisiera tocar unos puntos importantes también, motivación y poco. Entonces, lo primero es, como ahorita lo mencionaba Nathan, la ciudad, al ser tan grande y nunca se siente extranjero. Entonces, creo que eso es un punto importante también para cuando uno va a dejar su casa, su ciudad, su familia. Es un punto muy importante porque justamente es una ciudad supremamente diversa. Lo segundo es increíble la multiculturalidad en LSI. En mi caso, yo estoy realizando el programa, la maestría en política pública, que hace parte de la Escuela de Política Pública. Y por ejemplo, en mi cohorte, que es cerca de 70 personas, somos 28 nacionalidades. Es algo increíble que pues eso enriquece no solo por el hecho de las nacionalidades, sino por los backgrounds de cada uno, las profesiones, las experiencias que lo enriquecen y uno aprende absolutamente de todos los rincones del mundo. Y eso es algo sumamente esencial dentro de esto. Lo tercero, creo que en LSI ha sido la mejor decisión y es una gran opción en el sentido en que además de la excelencia académica, también la oferta como universidad va más allá del programa. Hay una gran cantidad de formas de engancharse, no solo en temas de bienestar, sino unos programas asociados a cómo construir la carrera, los siguientes pasos, en el desarrollo de la vida profesional, desarrollar habilidades blandas, no solo las habilidades duras, técnicas, en el programa que cada uno desee desarrollar. Y creo que eso es esencial y fundamental en cómo uno lograr una formación integral. Y eso es al final también lo que se puede alcanzar y donde sin dudas pues cada uno determina cómo se engancha en esa medida y que ayuda, como lo mencionaba Nati, también a crear una red, un networking para lo que sigue en la vida, pues, y eso es esencial. Em, el siguiente punto es, pues, al final también el ESI es un mundo de oportunidades. Em, uno pues tiene la oportunidad de tener a los mejores docentes, profesores, investigadores como parte de sus mentores, parte de sus guías de carrera, y también tener personas muy inspiradoras que además pues, le permite a uno o sentirse orgulloso y motivado de ser parte de una institución y ser egresado de una institución, como por ejemplo el año pasado el Premio Nobel de Economía a Semillero y Robinson, pues que son egresados de London School of Economics. Ese tipo de cosas pues lo hace a uno sentirse pues también de cierta forma motivado en desarrollar un programa de esa calidad. Y por último, pues en mi caso soy beneficiario de Colfuturo y creo que es una oportunidad increíble, es una oportunidad de oro para cumplir este tipo de sueños que son, como mencionaba, experiencias de vida, y que el proceso en realidad está fácilmente explicado con todas las plataformas, las herramientas que ofrece Colfuturo y donde además con la guía y posteriormente el desarrollo del programa Crédito Beca es una solución pues que en realidad facilita muchísimo la vida los estudiantes. Y finalmente, mi recomendación principal es hacer todo con tiempo, no dejen las cosas para lo último. La aplicación de Colfuturo, la aplicación del ESI, posteriormente el proceso del visado, cada una de esas cosas, si lo hacen con tiempo, pues van a disfrutar la experiencia y la experiencia inicia desde manejar la ansiedad con cada una de las aplicaciones y los procesos. Entonces, si lo hacen con tiempo, pues va a ser una experiencia de vida fabulosa desde el inicio. Adelante.
Hola a todos, gracias Juan y Natalia por sus palabras. Me presento, mi nombre es Federico, yo estoy en la maestría de desigualdades acá en el ESI, en el departamento de sociología. Y pues sí, como me uno a lo que han dicho mis compañeros, como venir acá es una oportunidad muy grande, como yo he tenido, como una cosa que me ha gustado mucho es que hay muchos autores que uno lee, que uno dice como cómo será estar con ellos y pues estar en el ESI en parte es esa posibilidad de poder estar como mi departamento, por ejemplo, todas las semanas hace un evento en el cual invitan a un académico con renombre a hablar sobre algún problema y uno puede ir y pues sí tiene esas posibilidades, como partiendo un poco de lo que decía Juan ahorita, como la experiencia de uno sí depende mucho de lo que uno quiera, como la universidad oferta unas cosas increíbles. Yo soy antropólogo, yo nunca he trabajado temas de números ni así, pero él sí tiene, digamos, un taller de habilidades digitales y pues yo finalmente entendí cómo funcionaba Excel. Es algo muy útil, como, pero esas son cosas que uno define que uno quiere hacer. Entonces, si llegan a tomar esa decisión de venir a LSI, pues también digo que es una gran opción, pero pues también depende de lo que ustedes quieran hacerlo. El tema del tiempo es fundamental, como revisar qué es exactamente los convenios que tiene Colfuturo u otras organizaciones si están en ese proceso de aplicar para ver qué ocurre. Yo les cuento un ejemplo mío, como yo apliqué a una universidad, a otra universidad acá en el Reino Unido, esto pasé, pensé que podía ir con Colfuturo y luego descubrí que las becas solo son para gente que esté en STEM, entonces pues no me servía, entonces pues la dejé, entonces sí les recomiendo eso mucho en este proceso de aplicar, como lean muy bien cuáles son las opciones de todas las becas que puedan existir y tomar una decisión informada ahí, como si deciden venir al Reino Unido, como pues hay muchas cosas que a uno lo angustia, el tema financiero pues es importante y pues yo acá escribí como 13 elementos que creo que pueden ser útiles para ustedes. Eh, lo más costoso es el arriendo, como por mucho. Todo lo demás no es tan costoso en comparación. Digamos, la comida es, si uno, pues, si uno va a comprar a un supermercado, ¿no? Si uno va a un restaurante, pues ya es más costoso. Como la comida uno puede conseguir a precios muy similares a las de Colombia. Esto dependiendo de donde uno compre. Hay muchas cosas en esto que decía Nathan de la Universidad de Londres pensada como una ciudad universitaria. Hay muchos descuentos, hay aplicaciones especiales que dan comida más barata para estudiantes. Entonces existen un montón de herramientas en Londres mismos para reducir el costo de vida, para el transporte público. Esto existe una cosa que se llama la Oyster Card, que es una tarjetica que reduce los costos de tomar el transporte, baja en 33%, lo cual ayuda pues bastante y no es una inversión muy grande. Esto también pues existen las opciones, por ejemplo, de ir en bicicleta. Existen unas cosas que se llaman las bicicletas Santander, que uno compra una membresía que es alrededor de 20 libras al mes y con eso puede montar pues bicicleta como cuanto necesite. Entonces pues sí creo que necesitan o sea, como informarse todos esos elementos que sí pueden ayudar mucho como a bajar el costo. Y pues no sé si Juan o Natalia quieran como decir algo más como en ese, como tips de cómo vivir en Londres o si quieran decir algo más.
Dale, manda.
No, yo creo que al final es, vuelvo e insisto, es muy, muy importante también un poco esa guía que Colfuturo le ayuda a uno también a construir el presupuesto, como lo menciona Federico, y todo ese tipo de elementos pues le van a uno dando tranquilidad. Digamos que de la zona de...
Gracias a todos. Yo creo que aquí le volvemos a dar la palabra a Nathan. Ahí estamos pendientes de sus respuestas. Síganos, lo más importante es que nos sigan en el link de la sociedad. También vamos a estar muy activos por ahí, respondiendo cualquier cosa que les podamos ayudar. Y habrán más de estos y los próximos mucho más dirigidos a qué tengo que empacar en mi maleta. o qué me falta para estar cada vez más listo. Entonces nos verán también por aquí, pero apliquen, los esperamos con todos los brazos abiertos.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak. Like I said at the start, I'm learning Spanish. I think you mostly said nice things. Someone will have to let me know in the chat if you just spent 20 minutes saying it was slagging off LSE, basically, um, uh, but come along and sharing your experience. And I can see we definitely have some questions already in the Q&A that I think you guys would be perfect to stay around for the next couple of minutes, and then we can do some questions. So with that, so in the last sort of 15 minutes or so, before we take some questions, what I want to do now is give a little bit more specific detail about how you actually, come and study at LSE, and really importantly, what the application process looks like. Okay, so we already heard a little bit of this from the society, but let's talk a little bit about what it would actually look like to be an LSE student, right, and the steps you'll need to take to get there. So the first thing to say, of course, is that depending on your current situation, you might be looking for a master's degree, or you might be looking for a PhD degree. So we'll talk about both really quickly. So with the master's programs, one of the big differences with studying a master's in the UK is that it is only 1 year. So unlike most countries where you would expect to do at least 2 years, maybe more, a master's degree in the UK is just 1 year. The reason that it's 1 year is because the UK has a very specialised education system. So our students specialise in their education like really, really quickly in the UK. Before, when you come to university in the UK, you choose your major like before you even start studying. So we have a very specialised system, and it means that it's only 1 year, but it's worth exactly the same as a 2-year master's, right? From another country. So that's the first thing to say. Then the second thing to say is that, of course, depending on what you study in a master's degree will really change how you are taught and what kind of learning you do. So most degrees at LSE will have, lectures as well as kind of small class discussions. And the class discussions are normally sort of 10 to 15 students. Some can be a bit bigger, but the classroom discussions are where you come with your ideas, with your opinions, and basically argue, right, with your classmates and argue your opinion and bring your own research and ideas. But then, depending on what you're studying, there might be other things alongside the lectures and the classes. So a really good example would be, I think we heard a little bit about public policy from, I think it was Juan David, forgive me if I got that wrong. If you are a public policy student at LSE and you're studying policy, many of our students will, as an example, have to do something called a capstone project. And a capstone project is where you are paired up with a government agency or with an international organisation to solve a real world policy problem. And that's just one example, right? Our management students will be sent and placed in businesses or large organizations to look at some kind of management problem. So what I'm trying to say is, depending on what you study will change exactly what the degree looks like. But normally there is a mixture of the academic classroom stuff, as well as more real world focused of how you can actually use your knowledge. So that's the master's degrees. Of course, PhDs are an even bigger commitment because normally they're going to be at least 3 years to complete a PhD. But the really exciting thing, of course, about a PhD is that at the end of those 3 years, you are probably the #1 world leading expert in whatever you've been researching, right? Because you've just spent the last 3 or 4 years of your life researching it. You are probably the world leading authority on whatever topic you've been researching. And so because of that, many of our PhD students will stay at LSE, either as teachers, but also as researchers, learning support, all kinds of academic roles. But then also many of our PhD students will go into kind of outside academia as well. So actually an interesting fact for you is that for our PhD economics students, the #1 destination is actually the World Bank, right? So many of our students come here for an economics PhD. They don't stay teaching, but they go and do research somewhere like the World Bank or the IMF, those kind of things. So this is just to say, you know, with a PhD, yes, you can stay in a kind of university setting. You can also take that into other areas. Here's what I would recommend, all right? So at LSE, there are almost 200 different masters and PhD degrees, right? Almost 200. And so you have a lot of research to do to figure out what's right for you. So this is what I would recommend, okay? And I can see there was already some questions in the chat about certain degrees, so hopefully this helps. If you go on the LSE study pages, you'll see a search box at the top of the screen, like you can see on my slide. And what I would actually recommend doing is, rather than going through all of the master's degrees or all of the PhDs, search by topics you're interested in, okay? So for example, I did this the other day. If you're interested in studying development, right, there are over 90 different degrees at LSE that involve some kind of development. And what's really interesting is that there are different, well, kind of variations of degrees. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're interested in management, okay? The way we normally work is we'll have one management masters that's kind of quite general, quite generalist. So you might come and study masters in management and you do a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. But then we will also normally have more specialized versions in kind of each department as well. So if you're interested in management from a strategy perspective, we have a management and strategy degree, right? If you're interested in management in terms of psychology, we have a psychology of kind of organizations program. If you're interested in management from an accounting perspective, right, we have an accounting version. So what I'm trying to say is, when you're doing your research, have a look and think, you know, do you want to do a more kind of specialize in a certain area? And then once you've kind of done this research, you can of course click into these and read lots more about the individual program, about what's covered, about any background you might need, and kind of where it might take you. So that's really a very quick overview. I'm of course not going to tell you about all 200 master's degrees have, because it's almost 4 o'clock on a Friday here. I need to go to the pub at some point. You don't want to listen to me all day long. So we're not going to spend too much longer on that, but it is something you'll have to go away and research. What I wanted to end on is a little bit about admissions and applications, the hard part, right? And what I just want to say before we start this section is, there is, of course, a separate application for LSE and for COLFUTURO. So I'm, of course, going to be talking about the LSE application. There'll be additional things you need to do for COLFUTURO. But one really important thing to say is, it doesn't, or it does matter, but you can apply to LSE first, or you can apply to COLFUTURO first. Okay? You don't need to have applied to LSE to apply to COLFUTURO. You don't need to apply to COLFUTURO to apply to LSE. You can apply to one or the other first. The one thing to say is that if you have already applied to LSE and we've given you a place, it might increase your chances of getting COLFUTURO funding. Okay, that's the only difference, because if you go to COLFUTURO and you say, I've got a 100%, I've got a place at LSE, they're going to have more confidence in you than if you say, oh, you know, I'm going to apply to LSE in a few months, so please give me some money, right? So it doesn't matter which way you apply, but you know, if you have a place at LSE already confirmed, it can potentially increase your chances of being successful with COLFUTURO. But anyway, in terms of our application system, so applications will always open 1 year before you want to start at LSE. So if you want to start this September, so September 2025, your applications opened a few months ago in like September, October 2024. There is an application fee, which is currently just shy of £100. If that application fee is going to be difficult for financial reasons, you can request a waiver. And generally speaking, we're okay with that. So if that fee is going to be a problem, let us know, and we can normally waive that fee for you. But with the application, you are able to apply for 2 different degrees at the same time. So this could be 2 master's degrees, this could be 2 PhDs, or even 1 master's and 1 PhD. It's completely up to you. Now, in terms of what we need a transcript from your university, so we know what you did degree. We need something called a statement of academic purpose, which is really important. So I'm going to come back to this. We need a CV, so we can see your job history, and also 2 references. Really importantly with references, okay, this is a big important point. You are coming to LSE to be a student, right? So the best people to write your references are people who know you as a student. So in that sense, the best people to write your references are people who have either taught you or have done research with you at university. Okay, so we prefer academic references. That said, if you want to swap one or both out for professional references, you can, but we always prefer, if possible, for you to provide academic. Additionally, and I think someone already asked this in the chat, for some of our masters and PhDs, we also will require a GRE or a GMAT test. This is not for everything. This is just for some degrees. So things like economics, things like finance, things like management, the more kind of like corporate MBA type areas, right? We'll ask for GRE, GMAT, but you're not going to need this in international development, in history, in politics, in international relations, in law, in all kinds of places. Finally, if you're applying to do a PhD, probably the most important thing is the research proposal, because of course, in the research proposal, you are telling us what you are going to research for those 3 or 4 years. And that's one of the main, most important things for PhD students. So we know whether it's going to be a good fit, whether we think your research is going to be worthwhile. This is really important. So there is no deadline. If you are applying for a master's degree, there is no deadline. It opened in October. I don't know when it will close, because with these degrees, we will close the applications one by one by one, whenever. So what that means is some degrees will fill up faster than others, and some we might still be taking applications for in the summer, right? In May, in June, July. This would be my advice, okay? If you want to start at LSE this year, in September, apply this month. That would be my advice. Because yes, applications might be open until later, but if you don't apply relatively early at LSE, you can miss things like the scholarship consideration deadline. You might not be able to get housing. It might take you longer to get a visa. So it's always best to apply early. And normally I would say try and apply before the end of January. So between October and January, okay, in the year that you're applying. Now, of course, we are looking for strong students at LSE, and it matters, you know, how you've done in your bachelor's degree. So on our website, we'll tell you exactly the kind of grades that we're looking for, but we talk about these in the UK grading system. So we talk about things like an upper second class honours. If you've never encountered the UK grading system before, don't let this be the time to try and understand it. It makes absolutely no sense at all. Like the highest mark you can get is 70. So what I've done is on screen is I've translated as to what this would mean if you graduated from a Colombian university. So licenciado, 3.8 sort of GPA and up, right? And if you want to apply for a PhD, normally you will need a master's degree already as well. We've already talked briefly about GRE and GMAT, so I'm not going to talk about that again. But the final point on there is also important. Of course, to come to LSE, we also need to, you know that you're going to be capable in English, and that's for our benefit, but also you need an English test for your visa as well to come to the UK. So you will probably need to sit an IELTS or a TOEFL or a Cambridge or a Pearson English test, but this is really, really important. You do not need to do this before you apply, right? So you can apply without an English test and get accepted and get an offer. to come to LSE. Or the only thing that would be different for you is we would say to you, you can come to LSE, but you're going to need to get an English language test before you start in September. Okay, so if you've got an English language test now, great. But if you don't, I would actually say focus on the application now and worry about the English test like in the next few weeks, in the next few months. You can practice more. Now, I'm going to skip past this very, very quickly. And I just want to finish here because we're really quickly running out of time and I do want to spend some time on questions. I need to stress that what we look for at LSE is the whole package. I would suggest, and you can speak to admissions about this and they will tell you the same thing, grades are not the most important thing. Those grades that I showed you on the screen before, genuinely, if you have those, if you have a 3.8, you are good enough to come to LSE. And so what becomes important to us is grades aren't, you know, the top priority. We would rather take someone with a 3.8 who writes an amazing essay, right? And is really motivated and really passionate and really, you know, explains why they want to come to LSE. We would rather take that person than someone with a flawless 5.0. It's like a pretty vague general application. So the way of approaching this is to really stress how important the statement of academic purpose is. Now, again, we don't have a lot of time to go through this right now. And for many of you, you're not going to be applying, you know, today. So we don't need to worry about this right now. But if there's one thing in the application to really focus on, it's the statement. Not only because this is a really important piece that we use to help differentiate between students, but also because this is going to be really different to what you've written in the past. What they look for in Colombian universities and applications is very, very different to the UK. And particularly if you've ever like applied to a US college or a US university, they want completely different stuff. So take your time with the research. And what I would say is, I know this is a lot of information and we've only really touched the surface of, you know, how to approach things like the statement of academic purpose, what we require. So what I would really recommend is, I had this at the start of the presentation as well, scan the code on screen, okay, and it will ask you a few questions about what you're interested in studying, you know, where you're based, those kind of things. And as a result of that, you'll receive invitations to our events about how to approach the application, advice we can give, things that might be relevant to help, you know, with COLFUTURO and with LSE. And as well, what we're actually offering is for anyone on this call now, or anyone who's watching this back on the recording, because we want to support you. We know how amazing Colombian students are and how amazing COLFUTURO students are. We are going to give you the chance as well to book a one-to-one appointment. So if you want to come and have a chat with me about your situation, about your application, you can book an appointment, and we will find time to kind of chat. But to do that, you're going to need to scan this and you'll get an email from us, okay, with all the details. Okay, I am going to shut up there because we are already really close to running out of time. I just want to say thank you again to everyone for being here. But Karen, I can see you're there desperate to come in and ask all of these questions in the Q&A box. So thank you again for having us.
Nathan, thank you so much, as always, for this valuable information for all of people, Colombian people interested in studying here. Juan David, Federico, Natalia, también mil gracias por compartir su experiencia. Tenemos varias preguntas en el chat. Voy a intentar cómo filtrar las que les puedan servir a la mayoría de personas. Entonces, por ejemplo, para Juan David, Natalia, Federico, ¿qué tan grandes son los cohortes y el tamaño de las clases en las que ustedes se encuentran?
En mi caso somos alrededor de 68 personas en la cohorte de la maestría de política pública.
¿Sí?
Dale, pues el mío es pequeño, nosotros somos 22 personas que estamos tomando mi máster y los cursos pues depende mucho de los que uno tome. Hay cursos como más magistrales que pueden ser de 50, 60 personas, pero luego hay cursos como más pequeños de 20 personas. Una cosa que tiene la universidad es que existe como la división entre como la clase y el seminario. El seminario nunca pasa de 15 personas y es donde se tienen como la mayoría de los debates. Las clases como magistrales, pues es más el profesor hablando.
Perfecto, en la mía también somos 45, y eso que dice Fede es lo clave. Y esto también lo hacen algunas universidades en Colombia, y es clases magistrales y estos pequeños seminarios donde se profundiza más y se comparten experiencias. Creo, Karen, que estás en mute, perdón.
Perdón, sí. Gracias a los tres por la respuesta. Nathan, here is a question for you. So, if final TOEFL score is 98 and the requirement is 100, is there any way to request an exception in order to avoid paying expensive again to a second TOEFL test?
It's a really, really good question, because this happens all the time. And I guarantee one of the students here will have had this where they got the score, or like one section wasn't the score they needed, or and it's annoying to have to resit. What I would say is, when you apply, send us everything you have. So if you have got 98 in your test and we need 100, send us the test with 98. What will then happen is our admissions team will assess that. They'll look at your background, and really importantly, they'll check to see whether your test will meet the requirements of the visa. Because the reason that we're quite difficult about English language tests is it's not just us, it's that we give you your visa. So if we don't get the right test result, we can lose our license to give visas. So we have to be really careful. So, sorry, long answer, but send us what you have. If admissions say they have to sit again, that's life, you might have to sit again, but don't do it right now. Send us what you have, and we will assess it and let you know whether we can give an exception.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And here, okay, Santiago says, hi, I would like to know if when applying for an LLM program, I can submit my TOEFL results as part of the application, or only IELTS exam is accepted?
No, we accept TOEFL, we accept IELTS, we accept Pearson, we accept Cambridge. So if you have a look on our website, we have the whole list of tests we accept. And of course, each one has different grades we ask for. But yes, you could use TOEFL instead of IELTS, that's fine.
Well, in terms of work, what is the percentage of employability of LSE Masters graduates?
Great question. And I skipped over this because I didn't want to take away from the Society's time. So LSE has one of the highest graduate employment rates of any university, not just in the UK, but in the world. So by the most recent numbers we have, and this is from 3 years ago, because we only get them every 3 years, 97% of our graduates had a job or further study within, I think it's 15 months. So 97% of our graduates, and that includes UK students, Colombian students, everyone had a job. And actually LSE has the highest average starting salary of any UK university. So we actually have a higher average starting salary than Oxford, than Cambridge, than Imperial, all of those universities. And that's across a number of sectors. So we have students who work in finance, we have students who work in government and education. But I think the really important thing to say is that, no matter where you travel in the world, people know about LSE, right? In big companies, in big organizations. In fact, I think LSE is better known outside of the UK than it is in the UK. So not only, do you have great opportunities in the UK if you want to stay, and you can stay and graduate if you want to, but if you go back to Colombia, having LSE on your CV and your LinkedIn is going to be a good thing. If you want to go to the US, it's going to be a good thing, no matter where you go. So yeah, LSE graduates tend to do very well after they leave us.
Perfect, Nathan, thank you. Well, unfortunately, the time is over. So me gustaría finalizar este espacio pidiéndole a Natalia, Juan David y a Federico que nos cuenten de pronto un consejo para los estudiantes colombianos, quizás que tienen un poquito de miedo todavía en arriesgarse y tomar ese paso de irse a estudiar en el exterior. Entonces, ¿qué les recomendarían ustedes? ¿Qué fue lo más desafiante también y para lo que deberíamos estarnos preparando? Bueno, ¿qué tip quisieran darles ya finalmente a todos nuestros postulados a la convocatoria de Colfuturo?
Thank you.
Dale, Nati.
No,
Ah,
Juanda.
No, yo quería reiterar lo de hacer las cosas con tiempo, porque algo con lo que muchos estudiantes nos toca lidiar es conseguir vivienda. Y entonces, con más anticipación lo haga uno, pues va a conseguir pues, mejores ubicación, mejor precio, y entonces eso hace parte esencial del proceso. Él sí tiene acomodaciones, pues, donde uno puede aplicar también. Entonces, sería que eso es como la parte inicial y esencial también para uno estar tranquilo y arrancar el programa.
No, pues yo creo que una cosa cuando uno está aplicando es como el temor a ser rechazado y pues que todo este proceso involucra como, pues sí, un gasto como económico, un gasto como de tiempo, pero pues también reconocer que lo que se consigue a mí me parece que es mucho, entonces creo que pues sí intentar como mirar como a largo plazo, como el beneficio que uno consigue de estudiar en una universidad como el ESI pues es muy alto, entonces pues sí creo que pensar en eso y no quedarse como estresándose en como qué voy a hacer, qué voy a hacer.
Yo me estaba demorando porque estaba pensando, pero creo que mi consejo sería arriesguense, que si en un año van a pensar estando aquí y se van a dar cuenta que no van a perder nada por aplicar. Y cuando estén acá van a entender que todo lo que ganaron es extremadamente mayor que todas las dudas que pudieron tener en un inicio. Entonces no lo duden.
Perfecto, bueno, a los tres mil y mil gracias por estos consejos y por toda la información tan valiosa que nos presentaron. Ellos ya estuvieron diciendo por el chat, por Q&A, que los contacten quienes están interesados a través de LinkedIn, entonces invitados todos a buscarlos, ahí pueden ver los nombres completos y los pueden buscar allí para poder contactarse con ellos. Nathan, as always, thank you so much for your willingness, for your time, for your valuable information. I hope really we have many more events together and continue to share this valuable information for all.
And I would really encourage everyone on this call to get in touch if we can help. I know there was so many questions we didn't have time to get to, and I'm sure that, you know, one of the exciting things is I remember actually some of the guys here who are speaking today, Juan David, Federico, and Natalia, were at this event 1 year ago, right? Listening to me bore them and tell them how to apply. And now they are running the event, right? And they're here at LSE in London. So this could be you next year. And I think that's a really inspiring thing. So good luck, get in touch if we can help, and have a great weekend ahead.
Perfect, Nathan. Thank you so much. Gracias a todos, que estén muy bien.